Good evening, workshoppers. It has been quite an interesting couple of weeks since the last episode. And well, to just go ahead and get things started, I'd like to welcome you all to episode 182, a season to remember. Because one way or another, I think everyone is at least going to remember the time frame that this season has been going through and happening. Very first thing, if you've been noticing any issues with the Battle.net servers over the last couple of days, I've been reading some articles where a lot of gaming companies are struggling to keep up with the demands that the coronavirus has been going through and putting on their servers, particularly like PlayStation, Nintendo, and Xbox have all been having issues because there's just so many people at home playing games that they're reaching peak capacity numbers that no one's really ever experienced before. And well, that's probably because we've never really experienced anything like this before. But in addition to that, Blizzard specifically has been targeted by DDoS attacks because, of course, there's a global pandemic. Everybody is stuck at home. There's social distancing and quarantine. The only thing that you have left to do is sit at home and watch Netflix or play games. And so let's go ahead and DDoS those so we can't even play games because, wow, the world is just full of winners, isn't it? But, pulling back from there just a little bit, of course, we've got the new season. Got the new season going through and starting. We have season 20, the season of the Forbidden Archives, and I've been having a lot of fun with it so far. I went and rolled up a Witch Doctor. I haven't played one of those in quite a while, so it's been fun going through and kind of relearning how to play the class, for that first night there until I managed to go through and get the new Spirit Barrage set put together, and that has actually been a lot of fun. At first, it took a little while to get used to playing it because you kind of like sit there and it doesn't do all that much damage, and then all of a sudden the mobs just die, and then they explode when they die and kill everything else around them. And so learning the mechanic of that, it stacks up damage, on the mobs, and then once it reaches a point where, the mob would die from it, they'll explode. Or if the spirit itself runs out of time, or if you spam click the spirit, it will cause its own timer, to go up and explode, for a whole bunch of damage. But it's it's been a really fun build. Of course, it is completely broken and extremely overpowered. And, my group, we were going through in that, first night, I think that once my two other friends who had also started Witch Doctors had completed the set before I had, we were running, Torment 16, like a Greater Rift 90, in just a few hours. Because we kind of funneled pieces into the one person in order to get that set up and running, and was able to just carry us, I think, through like the 70s and such. And then as soon as the second person went through and got the set completed, we were on 90s, and it was just, there's been a whole bunch of like 95 and 100s just, speed running in a couple minutes, for the last few days to get, gyms up, gear together. I've been going through and gearing up a Necromancer, because even though it's really awesome, and we've got these 3 new sets for the Barbarian, the Witch Doctor, and the Wizard, which if you're in the North American region, or if you don't mind going through and trying out the North American region, the Challenge Rift for this week is actually the new Barbarian Horde of the 99 Savages, or Horde of the 90 Savages. It's definitely worth going through, checking out. If Barbarian is not a thing that you are really down for playing too much, and you just want to give it a try and see what it's about, now would be the time, to go through and see it. And also, speaking of Horde of the 90 Savages, it was brought to my attention while just going through and browsing through Twitter that it seems that there was some Easter eggs in the flavor text for all the set pieces of the Horde of 90 Savages. And it is actually, really, really cool. Let me go through and pull it up here because I accidentally closed it at the beginning of the stream. But it's the flavor text in all of them was in reference to like old, particularly 90s TV shows. And let's find it. There we go. So the one that went through and caught my eye first was the heels of the 90s Savages. And the flavor text on that one is the last barbarian that wore these got into one little fight with other new tribe members that were up to no good. And it was like, well, that's obviously, that's Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And it didn't really click for me until someone went through and was like, well, I wonder if, people will go and find out what the rest of the like the little Easter eggs are, or what the theme itself is. And going through the rest of them, they basically, it's like the spines, which is the shoulder parts. Tales recount of a great war where one barbarian took down 4 enemies in a single battle that led to their ultimate victory, which is apparently that's Married with Children, where Al Bundy was always would go through and talk about how he scored 4 touchdowns in the one like high school football game. The claws of the Savages. The Savages' tribal chant involves 4 rapid claps whenever the rain starts to pour, which is a reference to the theme show or the theme song for Friends, where at the beginning of the song, how you have like the 4 quick claps and then they all open umbrellas. The leggings of the Savages. One young and cunning barbarian would often chronicle his adventures after returning home from battle, which was that one. It was Doogie Howser. How at the end of the episode he would always go through and write, about the events that took place throughout the course of the episode, on his computer. The Skull of the Savages, often giving advice to others, the neighborly elder barbarian has an unusual habit of hiding his face. It's Home Improvement, where the neighbor would never show his face throughout the entire show. It was always just his eyes from across the fence there. And I think it was finally the markings of the Savages. The horde of 90 Savages were fearsome tribes comprised of members from other fallen tribes, each with their own unique story, which is kind of a reference to the opening of the Brady Bunch. And that's the one that kind of like breaks the theme, because all the other ones were shows that took place in the 90s, whereas the Brady Bunch was from the 70s, though it did have like a second spin-off. I think that had like 1 season in 1990. But like the season opener didn't actually have any lyrics to it. It was just a musical rendition, or at least the ones I found online were. So I don't know. Maybe, could be that the entire theme of everything in there is like 90s TV shows, or maybe even as just Nick at Night TV shows. But it was really cool. It was really, really awesome to go through, and it kind of fits like the whole like 90 Savages. So it's it's all 90s TV shows that it has the take on it. It's a really, really cool Easter egg that was discovered there, helped put together on Twitter. It was pretty awesome. I definitely enjoyed it, going through and trying to find everything to put those together. And it seems that it was actually one of the developers on the Diablo team, Frankie Lee Jr., that actually had that was responsible for making all of these references that was on there. You can find them over at Happy Stupendous on Twitter if you want to follow them. And then where was it? Yeah, so just go through. I haven't seen anything else as far as like really big Easter eggs so far hidden in the season, the patch notes or anything like that. That was pretty cool. I wonder what they'll do going forward, and what they might else try to hide in some of the things. It's just if you just bypass like the little like lore stuff, like the flavor text and things, you could miss some really, really cool content that's going through and sitting there. But otherwise, the season is at least for me has been a relatively good start. The hilarity of these Greater Rift 70 primal drops If you've been on Reddit in the last couple of days, it seems to be a very popular thing where people are going through and posting their first primal from that 70, and it's always garbage. I was surprised that mine was not a Justice Lantern, though I have found on my Witch Doctor a very large number of Justice Lanterns and a very low number of Rings of Emptiness, which I think something should be done about that. Maybe, I don't know, but it's just hilarious about just how bad these first 70 primals are. It never seems to be anything like even useful for your class. One of my favorites was, I believe it was actually earlier today that someone had posted the drop for their Demon Hunter, and it was like Witch Doctor bracers. It's just don't change, never change, Blizzard. But I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but I have had ridiculous luck finding primals this particular season. And like last season with the Crusaders, kind of went pretty high pretty quickly, not as fast as I have in this particular season. But I think I've already found 5 primals for this season, and that is about equal to what I found in the entirety of the last season. So it's my luck at least has been crazy. Nothing useful yet. I will eventually find something that might be useful. One of the things I found today was Traveler. It was 1 Greater Rift. I found a Primal Traveler's Pledge and a regular Traveler's Pledge, and you can guess which one was better. The Primal was I think it was int. It was int resource cost reduction in life per second. I forget what it is. I already sharded it because the other one was cold damage, intellect, and critical hit damage with a socket. So it's well, that's going on the Witch Doctor. That's a no contest there. You find a primal and it's not useful. Something I hope that they do fix with Diablo 4 that has something that they do in the system that, even though I believe that they are going to be pulling away from the whole ancient primal itemization scheme, but if you find a super rare item like their mythics or something along those lines, it should be useful. Period. Maybe not in the particular build that you're running at the moment, but it should always be useful for something. Hopefully. Hoping. But then a conversation that came up with my group as we were going and playing this season is we were wondering if or when they'll add the new sets into achievements, and I guess by extension into set dungeons at some point. I know that Blizzard has said that they're not going to be adding the new sets into the Hadrig's Gift rotation until all of the class sets are out. And I wonder if once we have, in the next season or two, all of the new sets for all of the classes, we're just missing the Demon Hunter and the Necromancer, that they'll actually add in set dungeons for all of the new class sets all at once, or at least add them into achievements, because there's actually these new class sets are missing from a lot of the achievements and some of the conquests that are required, or not necessarily required, but are needed in order to go and complete the seasonal journey. Because imagine if you had one that was complete like a season like it is now, where it's complete or master 8 set dungeons and complete I think it was the 6 Greater Rift 55s with 6 different sets, and your Hadrig's Gift across all of the classes is a set that you can't actually run them in because it's the new sets aren't included in those conquests. That makes funneling in for other particular conquests a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult, a little bit trickier. For those that are dedicated and go through and knock out all of the conquests every season, like say Leviathan or Tuba Hero, probably not going to be too much of an issue because they're going to just go through and do it anyways. But for your casual player, that's well, I don't even have a foot started, or I don't even have my foot through the door on any of these, so I guess I got to do the other conquests in order to get up to Guardian, and it kind of funnels you away from that. And it's something that people, when it comes to set dungeons, people really don't even want to run them too much anyways, outside of just having to complete it for doing the seasonal journey. It's even giving people even more of a reason not to do it, I think, seems bad. But we'll have to go through and see where they go with it. And finally, one of the things that they did differently for this particular season, and I really like, is that they actually posted a little interview with Riker that they got went up on the community site. We're going through Riker talking about season 20 and all of the new sets, which is really, really awesome, just from the standpoint that, they are continuing to listen to voices from the community itself. Riker is the biggest and the most well-known Diablo personality that's out there, both across Twitch and YouTube. So it makes sense to go and start there, because that's going to be the person that more people would kind of like associate with. And I would love to be able to see some other creators out there, like such as my main man Leviathan. I'm biased in that respect, but it would be cool, if it's something that they continue to do to highlight, these long time content creators, a Bloodshed, Big Daddy Din, SVR, Lord Fluffy, the Peachile, things, people that have been doing it for a long time. There's countless others that I haven't mentioned, but just are very, very consistent in going through, and not just doing like the Twitch streaming, but also doing content guides and YouTube and other things like that, to give them kind of a leg up and a boost, because even with these new seasons, it's kind of tough being a content creator when you compare it to what some of the other games are going through and pulling in as far as viewership numbers, because that translates, of course, over into the bottom dollar for the content creators. And Diablo 4 is some ways off, and it might be even further off than we had originally anticipated too, as we'll talk about in a little bit. But so Blizzard going through and giving some promotional value to these content creators and helping them out is huge, because no matter how big you are, you'll never be as big as the main page of Diablo3.com. That you'll never get as much click through or traffic or just getting your face or your name out there as you would being plastered on the community site. So having that done is big and will really help out content creators in the long run. So it's really something that I'm glad to see Blizzard going through and doing, because it's something that kind of needs to be done if that you want these same people, of course, to go through and continue to rep your product while waiting for Diablo 4. It's just it benefits everybody in the loop. These people will go through and they'll be like, oh, really cool, Blizzard's going and helping me out, so I'm more committed to wanting to go through and create content for your game, which of course engages the audience a little bit more, keeps more people coming back for the seasons and trying out the content and such. But other than that, I'd like to know, how's your season going? Have you been trying out any of the new sets? And besides the new sets, I do want to take a second to go and talk about the Necromancer. And this is, I've said in the last, I think 2 episodes, that this is kind of like the season of the Necromancer, and it is, it's a little bit sad that the Witch Doctor is kind of at the best that it's ever been. But will probably be completely overshadowed by the Necromancer just because of the seasonal bonus, where if you at this point in time still don't know what the seasonal bonus is the Kanai's Cube is fully unrestricted. Not fully unrestricted, so you still can't use class items from other classes, but you're not limited to 1 weapon, 1 armor, one ring. You can equip any combination that you want. 3 weapons, 3 armors, 3 rings, two weapons in a ring, doesn't matter. And the Necromancer, because of the itemization on a lot of its items, gets a huge benefit from this, probably more so than any other class in the game at the moment. And it allows them to go and do things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do. And so the Rift Guardian Killer Corpse Lance build with the Legacy of Dreams is insane when you're able to go through and stack all of those hugely powerful weapon modifiers on for the Necromancer. And also the Legacy of Dreams Poison Nova Necromancer. If you, like me, loved your Poison Nova Necromancer back in the D2 days, well, you have one chance. And as Dead Set actually went through and made a really cool guide over on Icy Veins, for this Poison Nova Trash Killer build. This is specifically a group build. You won't be using this, in order to push solo or anything along those lines. But if you have a nice group together, because you're gonna really struggle with Rift bosses, this particular build, because it relies on the Blood Tithe Blade. Requires a lot of mobs around in order to stack the damage modifier up to kill things at the Greater Rift 150 level. So again, this is a group build. You need to play in a group for this to really be effective. But this is your only chance to play it, and one of the reasons is because you're using Nair's Black Death, the Blood Tide Blade, the Trangle's Corroded Fang, while still using Scythe of the Cycle, stacking all of these huge damage modifiers on there that then just obliterates anything and everything in terms of group clears. This is the ultimate trash clear that has ever existed. If you thought that the Crusader was really powerful last season before the nerfs for the animation canceling and such, and just how quickly it could put out that damage, the Necromancer just comes in and says, "Hold my beer," because this one is insane. And you'll only be able to play it this season. Unless they bring back the seasonal buff, you can only try it out here. So yeah, if it was something that you want, this is a unique build, go ahead, give it a shot. Yeah, it's pretty fun. And it's the thing that I'm building towards, at the moment, because hey, it's your one chance to play it, and I really want to try, especially with how much fun I had a couple seasons ago, playing with the Blood Nova variant that used the the Iron Rose, where it procced every time that you were channeling Siphon Blood. That build was a lot of fun. This one should be pretty cool, pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it. But moving on from there, of course, we've got the upcoming anniversary of Reaper of Souls, because Reaper of Souls came out on March 25th, which is actually a week from today. We'll be going through and celebrating its 6th anniversary alongside, of course, then 1 week after that, on April 3rd, Westmarch Workshop itself will be going through and celebrating its 6th anniversary. It's pretty cool. So for the next episode, the current idea is that I'll be joined by Dread Scythe and Leviathan to come onto the show, look back at not just memories from the show itself, but also just from the history of Diablo, or specifically Diablo 3, for all the things that we've enjoyed with the game, particularly Reaper of Souls. And a lot of it was spurned by watching Leviathan stream and taking a trip down memory lane of looking at things like Nephilim power and how we played the game before adventure mode was there, and just a lot of stuff that I had forgotten that were it was just part of the gameplay back in Classic, or even just early Reaper of Souls. Just throw one of the top builds that had to be nerfed, that Blizzard went in and changed, was the Crusader Nephilim. What was it? I forget. Is it still Nephilim Valor? But it's the little yellow orbs that no one really even remembers what they do anymore. But there used to be a Crusader build in very early Reaper of Souls that was completely focused on just picking up and spawning as many of those yellow orbs as possible, and that's how they were going through and clearing in-game content. And it was a real thing, and it had to be nerfed. They actually went and nerfed the talents that spawned the Nephilim globes in order to pull and rein the class back at that point. So it's some crazy stuff that you might not have remembered from back in the day. And I guess non-Blizzard news, there was a big talk earlier today where they unveiled the PlayStation 5 specs. I know this is kind of a rather severe gear change, but it's one of those ones where it's the things that they were talking about, that this was a recycled GDC talk. This was supposed to be a talk that they were going to go through, or a presentation that they're going to have at GDC, but of course because of the global outbreak, GDC was canceled, and so they decided to stream it. But it was a really not sugarcoat it, it was a really boring technical presentation. There wasn't anything flashy, no gameplay, no game reveals, nothing but just hard numbers. I understood very little of it. It was something that I saw that was also matched by a lot of the responses on Twitter and in other social media on Reddit and such, where everyone's like, why would you announce something that is that's technically inferior to the Xbox product? But there's a lot of industry professionals that are going through and saying, it's like, no, you have no idea, how much like that new solid state hard drive architecture, because it's not just a solid state, it's a custom built solid state drive that has data read rates that are insane, and things that they're going through and talking about. Like, you really have to understand that this isn't just for faster load times, that this alone changes the game in terms of how they can develop games when they can load content from the drive like that quickly. It changes the way that they allocate memory, the processor throughput, GPU, all of those types of stuff. They can almost just use it as like secondary memory without slowing things down, and just like a whole bunch of stuff. And it's like, I gotta take your word for it. I don't understand. I don't understand any of that. But it is just one of those ones where it is kind of like mixed signals, because everyone was really hyped that, oh wow, they're going to be announcing the PS5 architecture and such, and well, they did. They straight up did. But it wasn't really a talk that was targeted towards your general audience, and so the message itself was kind of missed, and it seemed to be like a huge marketing misstep. And it was just like one of those ones where it's like these big video game companies continue to I guess forget exactly who it is that they're going and talking to, because your average Joe Smo guy on the internet is just going to go and look at teraflops, which don't really mean much. But they're just going to look at like some one statistic and be like, oh, this value is less than that value, so obviously it's inferior. I'm buying an Xbox then. So just it's everyone makes some mistakes, and maybe that one was just better left like unhyped and just kind of like put up on YouTube or something like that without any fanfare. Who knows? But along the lines with like the whole GDC cancellation, and like kind of like for my personal reason for naming the episode "A Season to Remember" is of course COVID-19, the coronavirus. And just the effects that it has on everything, and just it's pretty intense. Like this is some some scary stuff. Whereas a lot of people, of course, are going through and talking about how the death rate isn't all that high, blah 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 blah. It actually is like that's really bad. It is many times higher than the flu, or even say like the H1N1, the swine flu from like a decade ago. That was magnitudes less than 1% mortality rate, at least in the US. Like 0.02% of people that got infected by it in the US died. Still 60 million people got infected, and still 12,000 people unfortunately died. But if 60 million people were to get infected with the COVID-19 here in the US, you'd be talking millions dead. And it varies, because the global average, I think, is something around like 3%. The US average is close to 4%, and Italy is pushing 8% on the death rate. I mean, even going for the low one, the 3%, would you want to take a 1 in 30 chance of potentially dying just because you got a cold because someone didn't wash their hands, or this person decided to ignore quarantine and went outside? While you're outside, or just picking up groceries or something along those lines, that it's something that's really serious. And so it seems that people are going through and making a big deal out of it, because it is. We as gamers at least have something to go through and fall back on. That it's like, woohoo, free time. We get to sit at home and play video games. There's a lot, of course, the economic impacts and such of people losing their jobs. I know, at least from my personal perspective, working in movie theaters, where at least for the time being that my job and my wages are secured. I'm actually still going to work, because a lot of stuff that I do behind the scenes, just because we're closed, doesn't mean that I stop working. So I still actually have a couple of weeks worth of work in order to go through and do pretty much through the end of April, and the wages are guaranteed through that. If it continues much past that, we'll have to wait and see. But like the Universal Films is going through and putting movies up on streaming service starting on Friday. And I'm sure that's going to be successful, and when everything returns to normal, and the movie theaters and everything else starts opening back up, like my industry is going to have changed completely, in response to, if studios find that they can make a decent amount of money just going straight to streaming services, that they might consider the length of their theatrical runs, or if it's worth even putting in the movie theater in the first place, or just going straight to streaming. And that's going to call into question some really big stuff. We were supposed to have a really huge remodel just to bring ourselves like up to spec, with the in-theater dining, the reclining seats and such. But that was going to be a very, very expensive makeover, and now that money is pretty much just going to be used to pay the rent and wages while we're closed for 2 to 3 months. No idea. So it's something that has a lot of effects, and it's not just those industries or the service industry and stuff. We're also going to see this bleed over into the video game industry and such. There was a email that went out by Cryptic Studios for Star Trek Online that they had to shut down their test servers because they're using that for internal testing now. Because everyone is going through and working from home, a lot of these gaming companies, Blizzard included, that you can't really work from home, that they use so much proprietary stuff or things that are under heavy, tight NDAs. Like, they don't want people, logging in and working on code for Diablo 4 where anybody can go through and see, or, just, walk past, or where they don't have, like, control over who has access to it and such. To where that I'm sure that there's going to be limitations as to what they'll allow to work on. If you're just going to be doing, some animation and some rigging or some little tweaks and stuff like that, sure. Are they going to have like a full-on playable build, for people to access from home? Who knows? Maybe. But it's something that we can definitely say that even if development continues, it will be in a radically different state than what they were going for, just a couple weeks ago. And even at that point, say that they're able to go through and maintain the same level of productivity, it's going to take some time in order to get there, as people have to adjust to the new work environments, working, their kids are home, if they're parents, for the foreseeable future. Many states have already went through and declared the rest of the school year is done. Your kid's staying home until September, or and so there's a lot of unknowns and things like that for the industries that still will continue to be operating, during this massive shutdown that, like, we've never really had to deal with something like this in the modern era. Sure, pandemics of this scale have happened and have been worse, but not to the extent that we have at this rate. Where like people's entire livelihoods and stuff like that are going to be upset, because one of the things that they're going through and talking about, that the biggest ramification isn't going to be the deaths or the mortality rate, but the bankruptcy rate. How many people are going to be pushed into heavy debt and such. And yeah, that's everything around that is going to have huge ramifications. Even just going through and like looking at Disney, like their stock has been in free fall, not just because of all of the movie delays, but the park closures and such. And now one of the rumors is floating around is that Apple might be looking to go through and gobble up Disney. And of course, like Disney, they've got contracts out with EA for the Star Wars and all this other types of stuff. And then the people that are going to be in charge of making those decisions are going to be somebody else, potentially in the future. So it's a lot of unknowns. So a lot of unknowns going forward. But at least the one known thing is that I will continue to go through and do the show. Maybe in the coming weeks, I might be able to go back to weekly, potentially, depending upon how my schedule goes. As like I said, I've still have kind of like full on work hours, at least for the next month or so, and we'll see how things go from there. But yeah, I do wish and hope that everyone going through and listening to this show is safe, and that your loved ones are safe. Please, make sure that you take everything seriously. I know you probably have seen this from every single thing that you've ever subscribed to in terms of an email and such. But just reiterating it one more time. That just I hope you all do well, and that that you're able to get through this without too many hardships. And with that, it will go and bring me to a close, for this particular episode. Please go through. Let me know how's the season going. How's life treating you and such. What takeaways have you gotten so far from season 20? What are you looking forward to? Is there anything here that you'd like to see in Diablo 4? Have you been playing the Path of Exile League instead? Are you still playing Wilson? Are you looking forward to Last Epoch or something else in the ARPG line? Just drop me a line. westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. Again, that email address is westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. You can also go through, leave a review on iTunes. You can leave a comment on YouTube. You can even hit me up on Twitter. The show's Twitter handle is at the WM Workshop. You can also follow me personally. I'm at 9ballgamer on Twitter. And of course, you can go through and you can check out the show here. I record live every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, at twitch.tv/BlizzPro. And we'll see what we can do from there. And also, please do not miss episode 183. Coming up on April 1st, where I'll be having Dread Scythe and Leviathan. This is not an out of season April Fool's Day joke. They both are hoping to go through and be on the show. Schedules still permitting, because it is a couple weeks from now. But I look forward to chatting with them and going through and hearing from you guys soon. Until then, have a good night. Stay safe.